L'Assemblée va entendre.
The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Mr. Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Gabonese Republic. I ask protocol to accompany His Excellency.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Gabonese Republic. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Monsieur le Président,
President, Secretary General, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, President. First of all, allow me to warmly congratulate you on your most deserved election to the helm of the 72nd regular session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. From the outset, I wish to assure you of Gabon's support to discharge the mandate with which you have been entrusted. I also wish to hail the notable work carried out by your predecessor, Ambassador Peter Thompson. It is finally a privilege for me to convey my warmest congratulations to the new Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. I remain convinced that his rich and lengthy experience is a significant asset which will ensure the successful leadership of our organization. I am delighted to note the particular emphasis that the Secretary General placed on conflict prevention during his inaugural address. Mr. President, the theme of the general debate of this session, focusing on people, striving for peace and a decent life for all on a sustainable planet, is at the very heart of our priorities. This theme recalls to each and every one of us the central place which human beings must occupy in our respective endeavours. It also recalls the obligation which rests on our shoulders to reconcile development, sustainable, lasting peace, and environmental protection for current and future generations. It therefore behooves us all to take action in order to fashion a humankind where and conditions where each and every human being can live a decent life, and where this concept is not called into question. Where peace is concerned, it is, along with security, a vital prerequisite for the development of Africa and my country. In this connection, Africa will continue to occupy and does continue to occupy the lion's share of the Security Council's agenda. Therefore, my country here repeats the African position and endorses the African position indeed in favour of a permanent seat for Africa on the Security Council. Mr. President, international peace is crucial. Equally crucial is peace and security at a national level. These are the essential ingredients of development and the essential ingredients which will ensure the participation of all in democratic debate. Gabon is a country bearing the hallmark of peace, and we wish to remain this haven of brotherly bonds and solidarity which it has always been. This is why I convened a political dialogue to which I invited the nation's most prominent figures. All of the people that participated in this political dialogue were able to candidly discuss all of the issues of importance for my country and the reforms which they desired to see. Of course, compromises were struck. Of course, these compromises were difficult, but they were dynamic. And they discussed, for example, reform necessary for elections. They discussed voting systems, electoral procedures, and the organisation of powers. Moreover, we have looked to implement the conclusions of this political dialogue, and this has already begun with the formation of a new government recently comprising representatives of the opposition and civil society. Mr. President, with the adoption of the MDGs and the SDGs, our organisation is continuing its endeavours to mobilise the international community in order to offer all human beings decent living conditions, a decent life indeed, on a well-sustained planet. But beyond these simple declarations, the time has come to give our organizations the resources it requires to act. It must enjoy predictable and sustained financing in order to ensure the successful implementation of the SDGs. As far as my country, Gabon, is concerned, The new government is operating within a framework entitled the Vision of an Emerging Gabon for 2025. It's the overarching aim of this framework is to ensure the sustainable development of and the diversification of the national economy. This framework aims to reduce the country's dependence on extractive industries and commodities whose prices are volatile. This framework is also being given tangible form through initiatives undertaken to strengthen the industrial fabric of our nation and create jobs for all. We have special economic areas also operating under privileged regimes. Mr. President, the crisis striking the planet spares no nation and does not spare Gabon. This crisis is translating into an economic slowdown which is having a negative impact on employment, and namely increasing youth unemployment. To face up to this challenge, the government adopted an economic recovery plan which is looking to lend new momentum to our economy. At its heart are budgetary adjustment measures and measures taken to develop infrastructures and promote the private sector. These will all be levers which will be used to favour the diversification and transformation of our economy. In spite of all its difficulties, my government is striving to offer the people of Gabon better living conditions through a number of measures which range from reducing the price of basic goods to the construction of university hospitals. In the same vein, I have established a program for equal opportunities. This program should allow all Gabonese people to enjoy the same resources and opportunities as they embark upon the path of personal and collective fulfillment. In the same vein again, I have placed women's empowerment at the heart of the government's agenda. Mr. President, the future of our planet will depend for many on our determination to honour the commitments we took within the Paris Accord during COP21 in Paris. We have no right at all to fall short of the expectations and hopes placed in us at this historic moment, because the challenges posed by climate change are not simply environmental ones. They are also political, economic and security challenges. We have far less the right to disappoint this hope, given that the reality that we wish to ignore and deny stands in front of us every day with increasingly brutal force, just as we are seeing with the environmental disasters which have occurred in recent days. I express the solidarity of the people of Gabon to the latest victims of the latest hurricanes, and I also express my solidarity with the people of Mexico following the earthquake. As far as Gabon is concerned, we will not deviate from our path to protect the environment. Our public policies are all looking to responsibly and sustainably manage our resources. In this spirit, my country has just created 20 marine protected areas, and we already have 13 national parks. Moreover, I have instructed the government to strengthen its afforestation policy to ensure the sustained, lasting existence of our forests. President, our country is committed to improving work on all of these major issues, and as such, I have been appointed the chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. For the next 2 years, I will have the responsibility to speak with Africa's voice in all negotiations regarding climate change, and I will follow my predecessor, the Egyptian president, in doing so. On a sub-regional level, my peers have entrusted me with the chairmanship of the Economic Community of Central African States. Here, my task will be to spearhead a institutional reform process which will further regional integration. We are determined to ensure further economic integration in the African region, and therefore we believe it is now more necessary than ever before to embark upon a path of joint regional development to face the vacillations of the international market. President, our organization, through its bureau in Libreville, supports Central Africa in its attempts to face up to peace and security challenges in the region. Thus, the members of the Economic Community of Central African States have confirmed their determination to fight the beast of terrorism in all its forms. And whatever motivates terrorist attacks to this effect, the sub-regional anti-terrorist strategy for Central Africa was recently confirmed in Yaoundé and is in full harmony with the anti-terrorist strategy of the African Union. Its aim is to take tangible steps to eradicate this scourge. Therefore, I should commend the imminent holding of a Economic Community of Central African States ECOWAS Joint Summit. I've always expressed a desire to see such a summit convened, and it's in full line with the Security Council Resolution 2349. I also commend the initiative taken by the countries of the G5 Sahel to institute a sub-regional force to fight effectively against terrorism, and indeed all other threats to peace and security. Mr. President, fighting terrorism and all threats to peace and security is a multifaceted, pluriform struggle, and indeed a long-term struggle, which requires cooperation between states and solidarity with the victims of barbarism. We cannot simply provide military responses to the terrorist threat. This is why I recall the provisions of the Resolution 2199 of 2015 of the Security Council. This resolution called for cutting off the sources of financing for criminal networks. In addition to terrorism, there is another grave threat hovering over a number of countries, including mine, and that is poaching. On this issue, my country is the co-sponsor of an important resolution whose aim is to pool our efforts in order to curb this phenomenon. Poaching decimates fauna and flora and precipitates destabilization in a number of regions, namely in Africa. The expeditious implementation of recommendations made within this resolution is, to me, a crucial step which we must take, and indeed we must continue to search for the rightful proper balance between the protection of nature and the survival of local populations, who are the main victims of poaching. Mr. President, among the worrying situations prevailing in Africa, the situation currently prevailing in the Central African Republic requires our sustained attention. As far as Gabon is concerned, we continue to be present in this brother country within MINUSCA. I invite various partners to support the action plan drawn up by the Economic Community of Central African States and the Central African Economic and Monetary Union. I also invite them to support the DDR program. Moreover, the arms embargo on the security forces of the CAR must be lifted so that these forces can bring security back to national territory. President, the proven resilience and defiance of the negative forces whose venom continues to flow in DRC and the CAR and in other parts of the sub-region of Central Africa is strength and defiance which continues to grow as a result of the illegal exploitation of natural resources. International measures taken against the illicit trade of natural resources must be properly enforced if we wish to fight against armed groups who continue to perpetrate criminal acts. Working to foster peace involves eradicating weapons of mass destruction through the proper enforcement of relevant international instruments. Mr. President, a number of regions of the Middle East are the theatre of and the stage indeed for serious threats to peace and security at an international level. Threats brought about by nebulous terrorists. I am talking about the so-called Islamic State, which are sowing the seeds of and aggravating instability in Syria and Iraq. The question of Palestine remains a thorn in the side of the international community. As far as I am concerned, the reinstitution of direct, frank, open talks between both sides is the only path we must pursue if we are to reach a solution. I can only note my appreciation for the efforts undertaken by the United States and France to relaunch this peace process. As far as the Korean Peninsula is concerned, Gabon remains firmly committed to seeing peace and stability flower in this part of the world, and we call for the strict compliance with the relevant resolutions of the Security Council. President, a human tragedy of unprecedented proportions is now prevailing. I'm talking about the situation of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. Indeed, in the 21st century, it is unacceptable that men, women, and children lose their lives or are forced to flee their country for the simple reason that they belong to a religious community. This assembly has a universal conscience and therefore cannot accept this phenomenon. This universal conscience must be piqued and we must act. Finally, and regarding international solidarity and justice, I should say here that we must lift the embargo that has been affecting Cuba for a number of decades. Mr. President, our organization is today blowing out its 72nd candle. Its universal vocation is robust and growing ever stronger. I do not doubt that our organization, with our collective determination, will be able to eradicate the multifaceted challenges currently standing in the way of peace and security in the world. That is why prioritizing human beings and ensuring peace and a decent life for all on a sustained, protected planet is no longer a simple ambition, but a collective duty we must uphold. Thank you.
Au nom de l'Assemblée.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Mr. Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Gabonese Republic, for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.